So I hear the next presenter is going to be shooting from the hip, right? I met this gentleman 50 years ago when the program started. That's when we crossed paths. And I befriended him at that point, and we lost connection for about 20 years. And I often wonder where he went. And then I went to a meeting at Cape Croker, and guess where he showed up? At Cape Croker. There you are. Anyway, so one of those things that we thought about the marsh project is that we had the insects covered, we had the plants covered, we had whatever was swimming around in the marsh and underwater and all that. But the only thing missing was the bird survey. We had no idea what kind of birds were there. From the top of my head, if somebody asked me a year ago, how many birds are there? I probably would have said 10. A goose, a woodpecker, a whippoorwill, a seagull, and once in a while, cranes. Anyway, so he proved me wrong. I think there's 42. Yeah, or 42 or 52 species of birds there. And that's not the end, he said. I'll come back in the spring and there'll be another 50. So I thank him. The program thanks him from the bottom of our hearts. He came here and he did it for free. He did not, besides the meal and in the bed, right? Anyway, so yeah, I'm very glad that he was able to do that for us. We were able to tie that web together now in regards to what is on the north side of the reserve. And I won't introduce him. He'll introduce himself.
Does this work?
Yeah, it works.
Okay, so miigwech, anin everyone. So I'm Jarmo Jalava, and that's probably why Theodore doesn't want to introduce me, because I have such a weird name. Yeah, so my roots are my parents came over from Finland back in the 1950s, and I was born several years after that, but I was born in Toronto and grew up in to the south of here in Ontario. And but most of my adult life, I've worked as an ecologist, and these days I for many years actually I've worked with SHKAKAMIK, so Cape Croker or Chippewas and Nawash First Nation, and also I work for the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation Environment Office. That's my main work. So and then I've worked, done a whole bunch of other things relating to conservation and ecology in Canada and even elsewhere. So, and it's a real honor to be invited here today, but also just to work with, you know, I've known Theodore really since 2009, I think, was when there was that meeting at Cape Croker. It was kind of a big conference, kind of like this, and there were representatives from First Nations from all across Southern Ontario there, and it was a great event, a full day event. And so anyway, I'll just talk a little bit more, because I know the connection with the land is so important, and it's a bit different, obviously, being from a settler background, or, you know, I was born here, but my family isn't from here. But I feel such a deep connection with the land and with all the other beings that we share this land with, and a huge sense of responsibility. And I've made that my life work. And I'll even talk about, and the other thing I'll mention is that, so I live on the Saugeen Peninsula, so the next territory over, take the ferry across, and that's where I live. And but we have a camp on Minising, so on Manitoulin, west of South Baymouth, and that's really these days it's my spirit home. We've been there for 22 years, and every day when I get up, I go for a swim, and then after my swim, like this is right into the end of October when I'm up there. I actually bow to the 4 directions, but then I also bow to another 3 directions, so 7 directions altogether. So also to the heavens and to Mother Earth, and also to the heart, and that's kind of the prayer that I give every day, and I give thanks, and even when I'm in just in regular surroundings, I bow to the water that comes out when I have my morning shower, and give gratitude to the water. So that's kind of what this work means to me, and what it means. And so part of Theodore mentioned that I did this for free. Well, I didn't do it for free because I feel um, it's really a sense of gratitude or thank you to WIKWEMKOONG and all the First Peoples of this area for taking such care of the island, and it's my small way of giving back. And as Theodore said, I'll happily come back and do more bird surveys. Um, so that's kind of my story, and I didn't prepare a presentation. I didn't know I was on the agenda to give a presentation. But what I can do, what I'll try to do, is I'll go through just an example. So the amazing work that Theodore and the Lands Department and the Species at Risk Working Group and the community here, and the support that the council gives, and then the schools, the involvement, it's just amazing. I don't know that there are many communities across this land, across Turtle Island, who do so much in such an integrated way to bring that awareness and that connection to the land. And so just an example. So I was just here for one evening, like one late afternoon. I met Theodore, and we went out to the marsh, and then he put me up in a cabin by the lake there, and then I was there on my own in the morning, and so I did the bird survey in the evening and in the morning, and I just had a list of birds, which is right here, and I sent it over to Theodore and said, "This is what I saw and heard." And the next thing I know, there's this big, beautiful poster that was made by the community, and that was all volunteer effort as well. So it just goes to show just doing a small thing, and it can grow into something really big, and so much learning from that in all directions. So I'll just go through this list. So this is on eBird. So I put the records into eBird, which is kind of a database that anyone can put bird records in. And then there's other, I'm sure some of you have heard of, or many of you have heard of these, they're called community science apps. So there's like iNaturalist, and you can report insects, and you can report plants. And anyway, eBird is where you can report birds. And it's a great handy kind of thing. So for example, there was a family of ringneck ducks on the water at the marsh, and so this is what they look like. I'm sure many of you have seen these before, but they had little ducklings following them around, so they're breeding at the marsh, which is really cool. Also, another really cool bird that they're still around now. I saw some come. I stayed in Little Current yesterday, and I stopped along the Highway 6 coming in, and on the flats, the limestone flats to the north, there were hooded mergansers in the water, and so they also breed at the marsh, I'm sure, because they were there in July. And then whippoorwill, which is a species at risk. So that's, I'm sure everyone here has heard whippoorwills calling at night, and their numbers have been going down a lot over the years. They eat insects at night, or actually mostly they feed in the evening, like just as it's getting dark and into the dark. And then if there's a moon out, they'll feed all night and they'll call all night. But they need to have a little bit of light to see the moths. They eat moths and flying insects at night. So once it gets really dark, then they're not out. But anyway, I think part of the reason they've been declining, there are probably a couple of reasons. One is loss of habitat here in Canada, but also possibly where they go in the winter down in Central America. And then also insect populations have been going down, and I know we just had a presentation on the amazing insects that are here, but just populations of insects used to be, when I grew up, as Theodore has pointed out, I've been around for a lot longer than 50 years because we've met 50 years ago somewhere. But anyway, I remember when you'd go out driving at night and the windshield would be covered in like dead insects from and these days, like they used to sell special windshield washer fluid just for it, like the summertime when the insects, because it would wash them off. But these days, most places you go, you just don't even have to use windshield washer fluid in the summer, except if it's dusty. So that's, I think, part of the reason why whippoorwills and other birds that eat flying insects have been declining. So that's a pretty sad thing, but it's great that they're still here. Then one really cool bird that we found at the marsh, it came right up. I was playing calls of different birds, and one of them was marsh birds that can be very hard to see because they like to hide in the reeds. And one of them is Virginia rail, and came right up to us when I was playing the call. Like we could see them just like maybe 10 feet away. There were a few of them there. So this is a bird, if you didn't know the call, you might not ever see one if you go to the marsh, because they really like to hide. But we were really lucky to see one. What else did we find? Let's see. And then everyone knows the cranes. There were a couple flying around. I'm sure you get more, and you see them in the fields here. Manitoulin is one of the real great places for cranes. And there's a bird. This is actually a good news story, because cranes used to be more common back, before settlers came, and even probably into the 1800s. And then they were overhunted and lost habitat and that. And there were basically no cranes around southern Ontario for many, many decades. And it's just in the past 20, 30 years that they've come back, and now they're so common. They're one of my favorite birds. They're talking about allowing hunting again of cranes. I hope people don't overhunt them again. But anyway, it's great to see them back, and they've got so much character. So just love those cranes. Just skip over a few. So those are all birds that breed around here. But there were also down by the docks. So we in the evening we were at the marsh, and then I walked around in the morning. I went to the Alvar and then the little dock there, and there was a lesser yellowlegs, and there was also, so there's a lesser yellowlegs, and then there was also a greater yellowlegs. And these guys, they don't breed here. They just migrate through. And this was July 12th or so. And what's so cool is that they breed way up in the Arctic, on the tundra, and in the boreal forest, like up near Hudson Bay and James Bay. Both the greater yellowlegs and the lesser yellowlegs. And the lesser yellowlegs is actually a species at risk. It's a threatened species these days, because the numbers have been going down. But anyway, so these birds that were here July 12th, they were probably already flying back south, but they might actually have been still flying north, because their migration is so spread out. But my guess is that these ones were flying south, but they go up. The first lesser yellowlegs actually often appear even in April, like late April, but definitely in early May, they start showing up, and they're on their way up to the Arctic, and they nest very quickly, but then the parents, they fly south as soon as the eggs hatch and the young are able to run around. The parents fly back south because in case the weather gets bad, they want to be sure they can come back and breed again, and they leave the young ones to fend for themselves. So and learn how to feed themselves, and then eventually migrate down to Central and South America. They migrate really far. And so you actually get yellowlegs migrating north in the spring, all the way from the sort of end of April through June, right into the middle of June, even into late June. And then by the time um, uh, uh, some of them are already migrating south, and some of them may still be migrating north because they come from so far. And then you'll have young ones appearing, like migrating south well into September and October. So really, like, you can see yellowlegs almost the whole time of the year that there's not ice on the ground, and yet none of them breed here. They're actually going up to the Arctic and heading back south. So just it's just amazing um, what you discover out there in Mother Nature. Let's see what else. Lots of gulls. So actually, there were 3 different kinds of gulls. So everyone knows the herring gulls, which are still around right now. I've been seeing them here. Whoops, that was just a second here. But then there was also, I don't know if anyone in the room here has. I'm sure someone's probably seen. So there were ring-billed gulls, which is smaller than herring gulls. They look a lot like herring gulls, but they have that they're smaller, and then they have that black ring around the bill. So they're super common in the summertime, but herring gulls are the ones that are here mostly in the winter and the summer. But then also, has anyone seen a great black-backed gull? Yes, yes. So these guys are big. They're really big gulls. And so there was one of them there as well by the dock. But what's really cool, and at first I thought it was a lesser black-backed gull. So I think lesser black-backed gull is on the list, but it was actually, oh, I can't get it was after studying the photos, I determined, and then I shared the photos with some other bird people, and it turns out it was a hybrid. So it was actually a cross between a herring gull and a great black-backed gull. So it was a bit bigger than a herring gull. It had a dark back, but it wasn't totally black like the great black-backed gull. So that was a very unusual sighting, actually. Okay, what else? Okay, so another, let's see here. Caspian tern. So people here have probably seen them. They've got the bright red bill, and they're pretty big, and they make a really loud call. Friends like it. It's but some people say they say "Go to hell." So anyway, they sound nasty, but they're one of my favorite birds. Excuse my language. I don't know if that's appropriate here. But anyway, so they fish, and like lots of minnows and that, and they're big, and they're pretty uncommon. Like they're considered almost rare in Ontario. They nest on islands and rocky remote islands. And the other bird is the common tern. It's a bit smaller than the Caspian tern, and very kind of more buoyant, delicate flight. I love terns. So that's another one of my. So they're here, and they're kind of uncommon. They also nest on rocky islands, often with gulls, but they're very vulnerable to changes in the water levels, and vulnerable to gulls eating their eggs and their young, and so they have a bit of trouble. But they're still hanging on, and they're still found around here. And then everyone's, loon. There was loons out. I think there was a loon out on the water at the marsh, but also on the lake. Let's see what else. So I'm almost through the ones I wanted to talk about. Cormorants, everyone knows. So there was one American bittern. We saw him flying across the back of the marsh that day. And do people know the call of the American bittern? Oh, I'd love to play the call, but I don't know that we don't have the audio set up here, I don't think, but let's see. Oh, it's not coming through. Well, I could get it on my phone. Anyway, something like that. Yeah. That's pretty good. That's pretty much what they sound like. Oh. Yeah, well, you could hear that. Those are spring peepers, but sometimes when there's spring peepers calling, you also hear a bittern. Okay, bittern. Yeah, that would be great. I could find. I can here. I can do it. I'll do it. Since we might as well. Let's do it here. I'll put it through the microphone here. Okay, here we go. Oh. That's what they sound like. All right. Let's see. What else do we have here? Okay, so this was probably the most exciting bird for me anyway, and I think for Theodore too, was finding least bitterns there. And we actually saw them. There was more than one. I think there were 2 or 3. But this is a threatened species, and Theodore had heard rumors that they were there, but we weren't we never really confirmed it. So I got some not great photos, but confirmed with photos, and it was calling, it was responding to the recording that I was playing. Also, I do the recording. If I'm doing a survey, I'll use the recordings, but generally it's not a great idea to do the kind of play the recordings and try to find birds that way, because I guess as just a general practice, because it can kind of stress them out and they think there's another bird in their territory and that sort of thing. So but just to quickly document whether they're in an area, it can be helpful for taking care of their habitat and that sort of thing. So that's why we did. But anyway, so least bittern is a threatened species, and it's like that Virginia rail. They usually hide in the reeds and they're hard to know, and even their call is kind of not actually. Let's play their call too, because then you'll know what to listen for. If well, that's not my phone. That's someone else's phone. let's yeah. I'll just play quickly the least bittern call here. Yes. It sounds like it's laughing. Anyway, so if you hear someone laughing at you from the marsh, it's actually probably a least bittern, and he probably is laughing. Okay, what else? So that was really cool to find them, because they're kind of hard to find, and they're very rare, really. And then this is another cool heron. So there were actually, bitterns and herons are all they're all herons, really. So there was American bittern, there was least bittern, and then there was also black-crowned night heron flew over. Five species. Pardon? 5 minutes. Okay, no, I'm almost done. Oh, that's someone's phone ringing. So anyway, black-crowned night heron. So that's another species of heron, also kind of rare. They nest in colonies, also usually on islands. So really, it's really important to try to protect those island colonies of birds, because they're very dependent. They nest on those islands because there aren't predators. So if people start disturbing the islands and changing the habitat or building whatever buildings on them, they haven't really nowhere to nest, because they won't nest on the mainland often, or generally, unless it's a really, really safe spot. So really important. Okay, almost done here. Just 1 or 2 birds that I was gonna still. Yeah, so great blue heron was another one. So everyone knows the great blue heron. So that was 4 species of heron just in that one evening and one morning. There's also bald eagle, which, you know, is a very important bird culturally, but also ecologically. And I think I'll probably pretty much leave it at that. Oh, barred owl was cool. So there was actually I saw the barred owl just near the cabin where, like by the lake there, calling and just amazing birds, those barred owls. So anyway, I'll leave it at that. There was lots more, but so that was, I think, total 53 species when you combine the two, the evening and the morning. But there for sure are more there, especially if you start looking at like going for migration periods, and then I'm sure many more breeding birds too. So happy to come back. Well, I don't know. That's not mine. Anyway, okay. So Chimiwech, and for inviting me and everything. Okay.